In this week's Seder of Sh'mini, on the day that was likened by Chazal to the day that the entire world was created, the day upon which Klal Yisrael finally had the mission into which HaKadosh Baruch Hu entered, Aharon the Kohen Gadol enters for the first time to actually serve in the capacity as the Kohen Gadol, in contrast to Moshe during the Shivas Yemei HaMilu, in the 7 days of consecration. On that wondrous, wondrous day when the Karbonos were brought, a fire rang forth from the heavens, consuming Nadav and Avihu, because they had, in fact, brought the incense and fire, which they were never commanded to by Kadosh Baruch Hu. And Kadosh Baruch Hu instructs Moshe Rabbeinu to inform Aharon and Nadav and Avihu that they are not to engage effectively in the laws of mourning, but rather they are to do what they are there to do, the avoda in the Mishkan. And what about the mourning itself, the loss? And your brothers, the entire house of Israel, they will shed the tears for the great calamity, the great fire that has struck the nation of Israel via the death of Nadav and Avihu. Ask the Dorish Mordechai, he says, wait a minute. It's an eloquent phrase, it's an eloquent command. But in fact, we never find that anyone cried. There's no later pasuk that says, like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, like it says by Aaron, Vayivku, and they cried. Where are the tears? And he cites the Imre Emes, the Ger Rebbe, who explained that when a person is nifter, when a person passes away, understandably there's great pain. But the impact of the loss of that person is not felt at the time of the funeral, nor even shortly thereafter, so much as later on, when we experience something and need that person to go to speak with, to ask an eitzah, to commiserate with, to feel the empathy or sympathy, and we simply don't have that individual. Says the Imre Emes that by the Maisa of Cosby Basur and Zimri ben Solu, at that time when Klal Yisrael cried, they cried because they understood well, in the aftermath of that event, that were Nadav and Avihu to have been alive and well, that incident would never have occurred. Their influence would have been too great. No one would have dared to engage in such folly and such licentiousness. Based upon this, indeed, the Dorish Mordechai says, we find in Orach Chaim, Siman Tov Reish Chaf Aleph, the Mishnah Berurah cites it, that on Yom Kippur itself, when an individual, we are told, citing a Zohar, anyone on Yom Kippur who reflects upon the death of Nadav and Avihu, Mochla lo avonosov, he sheds tears, his sins are immediately forgiven. Ubadav eino mesim b'chayev, and he will never lose his children. Why? Because if on Yom Kippur we realize that Nadav and Avihu were considered by Moshe Rabbeinu, as he told his older brother Aharon, that they were considered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his understanding greater than were Aharon and himself and Moshe Rabbeinu. Their loss has such an impact upon us for generations. And therefore, indeed, the people didn't cry b'shas Maisa at the time they were lost, at the time they passed away. But rather, much later in time, says the Imre Emes, when the impact of that loss was felt so greatly and so deeply. This actually answers a question that I've always been bothered with and I've never seen discussed. Why is it when a person sits Shiva and we come to be Menachem, we come to comfort that individual? When we leave, we say, Hamokim Menachem Eslem B'so Sha'ar Ve'lesim V'Rishalayim, that the Almighty HaKadosh Baruch Hu should comfort them amongst the others who mourn for Tzion and Yerushalayim and Jerusalem. Why don't we say, Hamokim Menachem Eslem B'so Sha'ar Ve'le Yisrael? Kadosh Baruch Hu should grant you comfort as he's granting comfort as he need grant comfort to other people who have suffered the loss of one of the Shiva Krovim, the 7 immediate relatives. Why is it Avei Lesim Rishalayim? And the answer, I believe, is Because when we lose our relatives, in an immediate sense, we suffer the pain, we feel the pain. But we don't feel the loss of impact until later, when there are problems of shalom bayis, or there are problems of being machanech our children, or there are problems making correct decisions in life, and we no longer have the individual who was no longer here to turn to pick up a phone, to ask their opinion, to ask a shayla. But Avela Siyam Yerushalayim, if we daven properly in Shemona Esrei and we say Yerushalayim Mircha Barachim and Tashuv, if we bench properly and we say V'nei Yerushalayim Mirakadishim Hey Rabbi Ameinu, and we think of what Yerushalayim was and how people acted and what it meant for Klal Yisrael when it was the central focus of our people, much as when we visit Eretz Yisrael and we walk in Yerushalayim, where Shabbos is different and every step we take is different, and people greet each other differently, and you feel the difference. Well, then we wish people who are in mourning that they should be comforted by Kadosh Baruch Hu, as He need grant comfort to people feeling the loss and impact of the loss of Tzion Yerushalayim. V'cheichem kol Beis Yisrael yivku es hasreifa. Not b'shas mais at the time that the person passed away, but later, when we recognize how deeply their influence was upon us and how much less we are blessed by their absence. Have a good Shabbos.